So I'm selecting only 2 fields. Why should I use select star and select the all 7 fields? It is not necessary, right?
Yes.
So I'm not even selecting 50% of the fields. So I should not use select star. But when can we use select star? Let's say I'm selecting student ID, student name, state, and rank. 2, 3, 4. 4 fields, right? I'm selecting 4 fields out of 7. What is the percentage of 4 fields in 7?
More than 50%.
Above
More
50.
than 50%. And also I'm selecting Aadhaar number. 5 fields. What is the percentage of it?
More than 75.
There is only one field left, that is village. There is only one field left, that is village. Now in this case, when you are selecting more than 80% of the fields, when you are selecting more than 80% of the table fields, you don't need to go for individual fields. Okay, because you are almost all selecting all the fields of the table. Okay, it is not useful even if you write a type structure and use the selected fields. It is not going to improve your program performance because you are selecting almost all the fields. In this case, you can go for select star instead of going for individual fields. When you are selecting more than 50% of the fields, table fields, you can go for select star. Clear? But when you are selecting less than 80% of the table fields, you have to go by individual fields, specific fields. Clear?
Okay.
Since it's our custom table, demo table, we have only 7 fields. I'll show you on table. KNA1, that is customer master data. So customer master data in your company. So how many fields we have? This table, how many
269.
fields we have? 269 fields, 200 plus fields we have here. Okay, in general, we don't need all the fields. We don't need all the fields data. We may need
5
10 or
fields.
15 fields, or we may need 20-30 fields. It depends on the requirement. But 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 in a single program, we don't need all these 269 fields. In one program, we may need customer number, address, name, and postal code, etc. In another program, we need customer number and all the remaining details like account number of the customer, working time calendar. Okay. In a different program, we may need different set of fields. Clear? But we are not going to use all these 200 plus fields in a single program. Okay. Let's say if I need only 10 or 15 fields from this table to be selected, do I need to go for select single or individual fields? Individual fields.
Yeah.
We should go by individual fields because I need only 10 fields, 10 fields from this table. So what is the percentage of 10 in 269?
Below 10%.
Below 10%. Okay. So I should not go for select star here. I should go by individual fields. What you need to do to select the individual fields? First, you have to create a type structure with the list of fields what you need to
What
select in the select
requirement?
statement. So go by the table. So first select the customer number and data element, and next name, name2, ORT01 in the same order. Whatever the order you have in the table, for example, if you need this field also, select the fields in the same order and maintain in the type structure, and then create the data element and then write your select statement and include all the required fields in the same order. Clear? Is it clear?
Okay.
This is standard approach. Whenever you need to select only required fields, First thing you have to remember is defining a type structure with types begin of and end of, and in between you have to place all the fields which are required. Okay.
Okay.
By using this, you can define your own internal table structure. Okay, based on your requirement. If you use type table of instead of this type structure, so the entire table structure will be assigned to this internal table. For example, if you use KNA1 here, type table of KNA1, the all 269 field structures will be assigned to this internal table. So it's waste of system memory, right? It's waste of system memory, and also if you use select star in the select statement, it will impact the performance of the program execution. Okay, clear?
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
It is clear. We'll go to the next topic.
Clear, sir.
Clear.
Clear? Okay.
Clear.
Now let us see how we achieve the same functionality of selecting only required fields using inline declarations. What are inline declarations?
We don't write a data
If
also
any-
repeated.
You don't need to define data object explicitly. You can define data objects in the select statement itself or while passing the data. You don't need to write data statement to define the variables, work areas or internal tables when we are using inline declarations, right? So let's replicate the same functionality. So whatever the functionality which we achieved using type structures, okay? Types. So, okay, here is our so what I am doing here, I am selecting only 3 fields from the table. For that, I have defined a type structure with the list of fields I need, and I have defined an internal table with the type of type structure, and I have included all the 3 fields here in the select statement, and I am displaying the output. It is clear, right?
Yes.
Now we'll achieve same functionality using inline declarations. How we write it? Okay, I'm reusing the parameter now. So okay, now let's see how we can achieve the same functionality using inline declarations. Select what are the fields I need? These 3, right?
Statement.
Please observe very carefully. Going forward, we are going to use these inline declarations only. Comma, you should use comma. The main difference is here we are not using comma, but here in the inline declarations syntax, we are going to use comma. Clear? Yes, rank. From Same table name. Into, did we define the internal table?
No, sir. At the rate of data.
IT underscore student, where we'll use same condition, state equal to p underscore state. Clear? Now I am going to reuse the same, copy and paste here. What it is saying, p underscore state must be escaped with at the rate, and IT underscore student is unknown. First let's see what is it. IT underscore student is unknown. Why we are seeing that error message? IT underscore student is unknown error message.
Because we didn't save any data, sir.
We didn't,
Until now. Internal data we can't define, sir. Data type.
because we did not define the internal table and we are using here. Without defining the internal table, we are using here. Okay. So how to define internal table? Using inline declaration, that is in the select statement level, use at the rate data
Data.
of okay. This is how you are going to define the internal table in the select statement itself. I'm not writing any, I did not create any type structure and I did not define any internal table declaration. I don't need these two here. So it will automatically define an internal table with these three field structure. Without using type structure, we can achieve it using inline declarations. Okay. So how to define internal table or work area in select statement? Using at the rate data statement. Here we can place, if it is select single, you can use work area. If it is select statement, you can use internal table here. You can also define variable at the rate data lv underscore some variable name. Clear? So whenever we are following this new syntax, we call it as new ABAP syntax using inline declarations. You should just add at the rate symbol to the parameter values also. Just add at the rate symbol. You are not defining this parameter, okay? But just add this at the rate symbol. Clear? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Execute it. You got the same output, right?
Yes.
We got the same output. With this simple coding, we did not define the type structure and we did not define the internal table. Clear? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So let's assume you need to loop the internal table. How to loop the internal table? What is the statement? What is the syntax?
Work area to
Loop at internal table of
Look at
internal table to work areas
area.
IT student.
Loop at internal table
into work area
work area w underscore.
student.
Did we define the work area?
No, sir.
Did we define the work area?
No.
No.
What it is saying? W underscore student is unknown. Why? Because we did not define the work area. So by using inline declaration, how can you define? Using data.
By using data.
You don't need to use at the rate symbol here. In the loop statement, you just need to use data. You don't need to define explicitly. I'll just disable this output just to test this one. Now a work area will be automatically created. What is this backslash?
Step by
They
step.
will come one by one.
One by one.
Hmm. Okay, the loop is running, the loop is working. Clear? This is how you do inline declaration in loop statements. You don't need to use this escape statement here. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So going forward, we're going to use only inline declarations, right? But you should understand the concept of this. You should be able to understand the concept of type structures and how to define internal tables and work areas using type structures. This is also very important. Sometimes we need to use type structures in the programs. Okay, we may or may not use these internal tables in select statements, but sometimes we need to define internal tables or work areas by using type structures. Okay, but if it is only for selecting data, we can just use our inline declaration syntax to write select statements. Is it clear?
Yes.
So what is the system variable? To know number of records selected from the database table.
Why sub RC?
What is SY sub RC?
Execute
The status of select state.
success of
Status means is it successful or failure? But I am asking about the count, right?
Count DB count.
Hmm.
DBCNT.
Yes. So that is the
DBC.
system variable. Yes. Okay. So this is how we write select statements. The complexity of the select statement will depends on the logic. But usually this is how we write select statements in our programs. Okay. Clear?
Okay.
So let me introduce one more thing. Those are events. So what are the program events? We have some sequence of events in our report programs, which each event is for a different purpose. Okay, let's see what are all the events in the report program. Till now we did not use any events. Now let's start using the events. So did you observe this comment section? So
Yes, sir.
what is the use of it? Like when you are creating a program, you can write your notes here. Simply you can write the notes. So what is the use of this program? What are the options of this program, etc. You can mention here. This is all commented code. Okay. So the first event of the program, we have a different event, but I'll tell you the required events, okay, which are visible to us and which are useful to us. The first event, what we use in the program is initialization. Initialization event. So what is initialization event? This event is used to pass default values to the selection screen inputs. What are the selection screen inputs?
Logo.
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 What are the selection screen inputs?
Right, sir.
Are you guys not using any selection screen inputs?
Use, sir.
What are those?
Parameter.
Parameter is a selection screen input. Why you guys are confusing? I think last week I clearly explained you about the selection screen and selection screen inputs. What is selection screen? What is selection screen? This is the
Displaying
selection
down.
screen. This is the selection screen where user is going to enter the inputs in the input parameters. This is the input parameter. The okay, the screen which contains input parameter are called what is that?
Selection.
That is called selection screen. The screen which contains input parameters, that is selection screen. This is output screen. Clear? Please make a note of
Yes.
things. Okay, please write down in your running notes. So what is selection screen? The screen which contains input
Default
parameters.
values.
So what is initialization? Initialization event is used to pass default values to
Default
the selection
values
screen
into
parameters.
selection screen.
So how we pass default values in our previous programs? Using default keyword, right? And value. This is how we pass parameters, default values to the parameters. Just execute. Now I am able to, you don't need to enter, right? It is automatically populating with some value, right? But since we are able to pass default values in the parameter statement itself, what is the use of initialization?
Can select any.
What is the use of initialization? I am saying that initialization event is also to pass the default values to the select statement. We can directly pass here, right? Using default. Why we need this separate event?
Can pass upper value to lower value.
Okay. So this event is used to pass calculated values to the parameter. Okay. What is a standard static value? You can pass here. Okay. You can pass here. Let's say we have one more parameter, that is let's take date, p underscore date. What is the data type for date? We can take d, or if
Datum.
you know any data element,
DATEV.
we can take it. Okay. Default sy hyphen sub rc. Sorry, what is the system variable for date?
DATEVM.
Datum.
Let me disable this. Right, p underscore date. I'm just displaying whatever the date entered in the selection screen. What is the SAP system internal date format?
Year. Month.
Date.
So year,
MM.
month, date without any separator. This is external date format, output date format. Okay. Sometimes you may see dot as a separator. In some systems you may see slash as separator. In some systems you see month here and date here. That is US date format. It depends on the user date settings. It depends on the user choice, user date settings. But internal date format is same. It's not going to change. What I am seeing here, 15 February 2022. Why? Because I am using sy-datum as a default value. But my requirement is I want to see current date minus 2, that is previous date. So every time I executed the program, I wanted to see current date minus 2 as a default date, that is
13.
13. For example, if it is today is 15, I should be able to see 13 as my selection date. So current date minus 2 days. How can we do that? System minus 1. Is it accepting? Check the syntax. What it is saying? Unable to interpret minus possible car of error. There is error because it is not able to identify this mathematical calculation. We are doing current date minus 1 or current date minus 2. But here it is not able to understand what is minus 2. Correct? in the parameter declaration. So that's why write a initialization statement, and populate the date. P underscore date parameter equal to sy hyphen datum minus 2 plus or minus 2, whatever you want, you can write it. Okay, check the syntax. So when this event will execute, when this initialization event will execute,
Mathematical events.
before displaying selection screen. Okay, when this event will execute, initialization event will execute before displaying the selection screen inputs, right? It won't display the output. Initialization is not to display the output. When it will execute, when you execute the program, before displaying the selection screen, this event will execute. Now just execute. In between execution and displaying the selection screen, now initialization event is executing. Okay, when this event will execute, before displaying the selection screen
Selection
inputs.
screen.
Selection screen input.
Okay, so when this event will execute, now when you execute this, now initialization event will execute and display the selection screen. Behind the scenes, initialization event will execute. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Now execute this program. What I see here, current date minus 2. Clear?
Yes.
It is very important thing you need to know. We can pass default values in the parameter also using default keyword. But why we use installation event to pass default values, a separate event? Because we cannot
The
pass
parameter not accept.
calculated values in parameters as default values. Okay, that's why we use a separated dedicated event, that is initialization, and under the initialization we write our code to populate default values to the parameter. Clear? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So next event is at selection screen. Selection screen, validate the selection screen. What is the event?
Selection screen.
What is the event name?
Excel.
At selection screen. Why we use this event?
We have to selection here only.
Data.
So this is used to validate the selection screen inputs. So when user enters something, when user, let's say I have this selection screen, this is the input field, right? Let's say I in the state field I entered some ZX. Is it a valid value?
No.
No.
No, right? So in the state I entered some random value. Is it a valid value?
No, sir.
I should not allow user to execute the program with these invalid values. I should display some error message. For example, when you are trying to log in, when you enter the wrong password, uh, what it will display?
Password will come.
It will display error message, right? Your password is not correct. Enter the correct value. For example, when you are trying to log in Gmail, you entered the incorrect email. What it will say? It will say that the email ID what you entered is not available, right? It is validating, right? Before going to execute the program. Is it correct?
Yes, sir.
Similarly, before going to execute the program, we should validate the inputs. If it is a correct input, then we should pass it to the select statement, right? We should not unnecessarily pass it to the select statement to hit the database. Before that, we need to validate the inputs, selection screen inputs. How to, in which event we need to validate?
Selection screen. Excel.
So when this event will execute?
For the event is
The
executed.
event program execute.
So this event will execute before displaying the or before executing the program. When installation event will execute? Before displaying the selection screen. But when at selection screen event will execute? After displaying the selection screen, and when you click on execute button, this event will execute and validate the inputs. How to validate the inputs? Let's say I want to make this p underscore date as a required value, because without entering this value we should not execute the program. I should make it as a mandatory value, right? How can you do that? If p underscore date is initial. What does initial means?
There is no record.
There is no record. Message. What is message? Message statement is used to display the messages, error messages, status messages, and information messages. Type the message in single quotes. Enter date. What is the type of this message? This is a error message. In capital letters, type E. E means error message. Okay, this is the syntax to display the messages. Message, message text, type, and message type. Is it a error message, warning message, or success message, status message? There are different types of messages. We'll discuss that later. For now, just remember this message type as E. E means error message. Okay. What I am saying here, if p underscore date is in shell, don't allow the user to execute the program and display the error message. These are very, very important interview questions. And also, you should use this event in every program, whatever the program you write. Okay. So order of the events are very important. The first event is initialization and the next event is at selection screen.
Selection
Initialization
screen.
event is to pass the default values to the selection screen inputs, and then at selection screen is to validate the inputs. They'll ask you, since we can pass the default values in parameter statement, why we need to use a separate event to pass the default values? What you need to answer?
As it's not taking the mathematical calculations, so you can pass the installation.
So in default statement, it is not going to accept calculated values. Okay. So it will accept a fixed value but not calculated value. That's why we are using installation event to pass the calculated values. For example, system date -2, system date +10, etc. Okay. So at selection screen is used to validate the selection screen inputs. So let's remove this date and execute. What it is saying?
Enter date.
Enter date. It won't allow you to execute